Today's story needs your full focus because you will witness the early beginnings of the Israelites. This episode is very important, so make sure you're watching it carefully. Among the scattered pages of history, the story of Israelites stands out as a unique and significant mark on the timeline of humanity as a whole. But to really understand it, you need to know that it all started with the descendants of Prophet Ishaac alayhi salam and then Yaqub alayhi salam, who were truly special in a way that set both of them apart from everyone else. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so you don't miss anything new. So, let's start. Our story begins with Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah, a couple whose unwavering faith shaped the course of history. Imagine Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah advancing in age, living a life of dedication to Allah, yet their hearts yearning for a child. Decades passed, their hair turned gray and still no child came. But their faith never faltered. But brothers and sisters, then came a moment that would change everything. Allah sent angels disguised as travelers to visit Ibrahim alayhi salam. When the angels revealed their true identity, they brought extraordinary news. In Surah Hud, Allah captured this moment. وَامْرَأَتُهُ قَائِمَةٌ فَضَحِكَتْ فَبَشَّرْنَاهَا بِإِسْحَاقَ وَمِنْ وَرَاءِ إِسْحَاقَ يَعْقُوبَ. And his wife was standing and she smiled. Then we gave her good tidings of Isaac and after Isaac, Jacob. Imagine Sarah's alayhi salam reaction. She was stunned for sure. How could she, an elderly woman, bear a child? She even expressed her astonishment, but the angels reassured her that this was Allah's decree. For sure, at this moment, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Sarah were filled with gratitude. Imagine the joy in their hearts, knowing that their long wait was over. And even so, their child Isaac, Ishaq alayhi salam, would carry forward the message of Tawheed, monotheism. When Ishaq alayhi salam was born, it wasn't just the fulfillment of a personal longing, but a moment of immense spiritual significance. The promise of prophethood in his lineage was a continuation of the divine mission. Sarah alayhi salam, holding her newborn, must have been filled the weight and honor of raising a prophet. The Quran reflected this profound blessings in Surah As-Safat. بَشَّرْنَاهُ بِإِسْحَاقَ نَبِيًّا مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And we gave him good tidings of Isaac, a prophet from among the righteous. Prophet Ibrahim was living in Palestine with his family. His son, Prophet Ishaq, was known for his kindness, wisdom and devotion to Allah. As Ibrahim grew up, Ibrahim decided that Ishaq's wife should come from their relatives in his old homeland, Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, which in modern day, nowadays, is Iraq, with parts extending into Syria, Turkey and Iran. So brothers and sisters, he sent a trusted servant on a journey to find the right wife for Ishaq. The servant traveled far, all the way to Mesopotamia, where Ibrahim's relatives lived. When the servant arrived, he prayed to Allah for help. He asked Allah to guide him to the right woman. He said, "O Allah, let the woman who offers me and my camels water be the one you have chosen for Ishaq." As he waited by a well, a young woman named Rifqa came to draw water. She was kind, polite, and full of energy. When she saw the servant, she offered him water and said, "I'll also get water for your camels." This was a big task, but she did it without complaining. The servant was amazed. He knew this was a sign from Allah Azza wa Jalla. He asked her about her family and found out she was from Ibrahim's relatives. She thanked Allah for guiding him and went to her family to explain why he was there. Rifqa's family welcomed the servant and listened to his story. When he asked if she could marry Ishaq alayhi salam, her family agreed, saying, "If this is Allah's plan, we are happy." Then they asked Rifqa if she was willing to go. She said yes, because she trusted Allah's plan. And so be it. The servant took Rifqa back to Palestine. When they arrived, Ishaq alayhi salam saw her from a distance and was filled with joy. They were married and Allah blessed their union. Ishaq alayhi salam and Rifqa started a family that continued the legacy of Prophet Ibrahim, spreading faith and goodness. After Ishaq and Rivqa got married, they lived a happy and blessed life. But there was one thing missing. They didn't have any children. Rivqa couldn't conceive, and this made them both very sad. They longed for a child, someone to carry on the message of Allah and continue the family of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. But Ishaq was a man of faith and patience. He knew that everything happens by Allah's will and at the right time. So he turned to Allah in prayer, day and night. He prayed sincerely, asking Allah to bless them with a child. He didn't lose hope, no matter how long it took. After many years, brothers and sisters, Allah answered his prayers. Rivqa became pregnant, and it was a miracle and a blessing from Allah. She gave birth to twin boys, Al-Is and Yaqub. Yaqub especially was chosen by Allah to continue the legacy of his father and grandfather, spreading faith and wisdom. Ishaq alayhi salam devoted himself to raising Yaqub alayhi salam with wisdom and faith. Imagine him sitting by the fire at night, the desert sky above them, patiently teaching his son about the oneness of Allah and the values of honesty, justice, and compassion. His words weren't just instructions, they were infused with love and deep understanding of Allah's plan. Ishaq alayhi salam also ensured that Yaqub alayhi salam understood the importance of family and community. He guided him to be a leader, someone who could carry the mantle of prophethood with integrity and strength. Allah's Azza wa Jal plans and guidance was evident in every aspect of their lives, as reflected in Surah Al-Ankabut. وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ كُلًّا هَدَيْنَا. And Isaac and Jacob, each of them we guided. When Ishaq grew up, his eyesight weakened, and he felt his time was near. He called for his elder son, Isa, and said, "My son, I'm old and do not know the day of my death. Take your hunting gear and go hunt some cattle for me. Prepare a meal that I love so I can eat and bless you before I die." Accepting his father's order, but Rivqa, Ishaq's wife, overheard their conversation. She favored their younger son, Yaqub, and wanted him to receive the blessing instead. She quickly devised a plan and told Yaqub, "Listen, my son, go bring me 2 young goats from the flock. I will prepare a meal just the way your father likes it. Then you will take it to him, and he will bless you instead of Is." Yaqub at that moment was worried. He said, "But Is is hairy and I have a smooth skin. If my father touches me, he will know I'm deceiving him, and I'll be cursed instead of blessed." Rivqa reassured him, saying, "Let the curse follow me, my son. Just do as I say." She dressed Yaqub in Is clothes and covered his arms and neck with goat skin so he would feel hairy like Isa. Yaqub then took the meal to Ishaq. But when Ishaq asked, "Who are you, my son?" Yaqub replied, "I'm Isa, your firstborn." Ishaq was suspicious because the voice sounded like Yaqub. But when he felt Yaqub's hands and smelled Is clothes, he believed it was Isa. Ishaq ate the meal and gave Yaqub his blessing, promising him prosperity and leadership over his brother. Shortly after Yaqub left, Is returned with his meal. When he brought it to Ishaq, his father trembled and said, "Who are you?" Isa at that moment cried out, realizing that Yaqub had taken his blessing. He begged Ishaq to bless him too, but Ishaq explained that he had already given the blessing to Yaqub and couldn't take it back. Isa at that moment was heartbroken and furious, vowing to kill Yaqub after their father's death. Rivqa, on the other hand, hearing this, sent Yaqub away to her brother Laban's house to protect him. After Yaqub fled to escape Isa's anger, he set out on a long journey to Haran, where his mother's brother Laban lived. When Yaqub arrived in Haran, he came to a well where shepherds were gathered. He saw a young woman named Rahil. He was tending her father Laban's sheep. Yaqub fell in love with her at first sight. Rahil was Laban's younger daughter, and when she brought Yaqub home, Laban welcomed him warmly. Yaqub asked to marry Rahil, and Laban agreed. but with a condition. Yaqub had to work for him for 7 years as a bride price. Yaqub alayhi salam agreed at that moment and worked hard, motivated by his love for Rahil. When the 7 years were over, a wedding was held. However, Laban deceived Yaqub. Instead of Rahil, he gave his elder daughter, Leah, to Yaqub as his wife. In the morning, Yaqub realized he had been tricked and confronted Laban. Laban explained that it was not their custom to marry off the younger daughter before the elder. Laban then offered a new deal for him. Yaqub could marry Rahil too, but he would have to work for another 7 years. Yaqub agreed, and after 14 years of patience, he eventually married Rahil. Despite the arrangement, he loved Rahil more than Leah. And yes, it was normal in that era that a man could marry 2 sisters. After that, Laban offered a mate for each of his daughters. Yaqub had many children with Leah, Rahil, and their maid servants. Rahil initially couldn't have children, which caused her great distress. Eventually, Allah blessed her with a son, Yusuf alayhi salam, who would later become a prophet and play a key role in Yaqub's story. Sayyiduna Yaqub continued working for Laban, managing his flocks and becoming very prosperous. Over time, tensions grew between Yaqub and Laban because Yaqub's wealth increased while Laban's declined. Eventually, Yaqub alayhi salam decided to return to his homeland with his family and possessions. However, he was deeply anxious about meeting his brother Ishaac, who had vowed to kill him years earlier because Yaqub had taken his blessing. As Yaqub approached his homeland, he sent messengers ahead to inform Ishaac that he was coming in peace. The messengers returned with troubling news. Ishaac was coming to meet Yaqub with 400 men. Fearing that Ishaac might still be angry and planning to harm him, Yaqub divided his family, servants, and livestock into 2 groups, hoping that if one was attacked, the other could escape. Yaqub prayed to Allah for protection and reminded him of his promises to bless and multiply his descendants. He also, brothers and sisters, prepared gifts for Ishaac, large herd of livestock, to soften his brother's heart. The night before meeting Ishaac, Yaqub stayed alone. A mysterious man, often interpreted as an angel or a representation of God, wrestled with Jacob until dawn. During the struggle, Jacob's hip was injured, but he refused to let go until he received a blessing. The man blessed him and gave him a new name, Israel, meaning the slave of Allah. This event marked a turning point in Yaqub's life, symbolizing his faith, persistence, and reliance on Allah Azza wa Jalla. The next day, Yaqub saw Ishaac approaching with his men. Yaqub humbly bowed to the ground as Ishaac came near. To Yaqub's surprise, Ishaac ran to him, embraced him, kissing him, and wept. The 2 brothers were reconciled after years of separation. Ishaac initially refused Jacob's gifts, but eventually accepted them after Yaqub insisted. They parted on good terms, with Ishaac returning to his home in Seir and Yaqub settling in Shechem. After reconciling with his brother Ishaac, Yaqub settled near the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan. He purchased a plot of land and set up his camp there. This was an important location as it presented a step toward fulfilling God's promise to give the land to Yaqub and his descendants, as he started building Jerusalem, which is referred to as Bayt al-Maqdis in Islamic traditions, meaning the holy house or the sacred house. After Yaqub left Shechem and moved closer to Bethel, he and his family continued their journey southward toward Ephrath, later known as Bethlehem. During this journey, Rahil, Yaqub's beloved wife and the mother of Yusuf, became pregnant and was expecting another child. However, her labor was very difficult and she suffered greatly. Despite the hardship, she gave birth to a son. He called him Binyamin. And by that time, Yaqub had 12 male sons, including Yusuf, and they are Bani Israel. Tragically, Rahil passed away during childbirth. Yaqub was heartbroken over the loss of his beloved wife for sure. He buried her on the way to Ephrath and set up a marker over her grave. This place became known as the tomb of Rahil, which remains a significant site to this day in religious tradition. But wait, about the story of Yusuf and his brothers, we are going to talk about it in another video. However, long story short, he got separated from Yaqub for about 40 years. At last, Yaqub reunited with his lost son, Yusuf alayhi salam. When Yaqub grew old and felt his time was near, he gathered his sons to give them his final blessings and advice. This scene is deeply significant, as it reflects his role as a father and a prophet. In the Quran, Yaqub's death is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, focusing on his final moments and this concern for his son's faith. أم كنتم شهداء إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا ونحن له مسلمون. Or were you witnesses when death approached Jacob and he said to his sons, what will you worship after me? They said, we will worship your God and the God of your fathers Abraham, Ishmael and Isaac. One God, and to him we submit. So, brothers and sisters, why do I tell that story? One, because in general, understanding prophets' stories elevate the level of understanding of the Quran for us. When we read and recite Quran, we understand more as we understand the stories inside it. Two, every prophet story is unique in its way. For example, Ishaac's birth from the start was 100% miracle for Abraham and Sarah, and that simply can teach us that there is no impossible with Allah. You have just to pray and dua for him and trust his will. Another one, Yaqub's test from Allah, as Yusuf alayhi salam gets lost for around 40 years or more, then Allah makes them reunited again. That teaches us how to be patient with Allah tests and keep turning to Allah in dua during his trials. So, hey brothers and sisters, if you enjoyed this video, you are going to love this one right here, where I share the story of another prophet. Be sure to check it out. Salam.